Hello, we're going to get started now. I want to welcome you all to our webinar about conversion ADUs and junior ADUs. My name is Anna Alexeva, and I'm the director of the ADU Resource Center of San Mateo County, which is hosting this webinar. And I am joined by Alex Tzang, who is an architect and will be the main presenter today. I'll introduce him a little bit more in a second. I want to start today by orienting you to the agenda that we're going to cover in the webinar, which is on the next slide, if we can go there, Alex. So today we're going to be diving into ADU conversions, and this can include conversions of your primary living space or a conversion of a garage or another accessory structure. We'll cover the main things that you should know if you're considering a conversion ADU or a JADU or a junior ADU, including the pros and cons of conversions and JADUs, some basic requirements that you should be aware of, and issues and frequently asked questions that come up with these types of ADU projects. Our main presenter today, like I said, is going to be Alex, and I will introduce Alex in a little bit before handing him the mic, but I do want to note that the ADU Resource Center is a nonprofit. So as such, it doesn't make any endorsements of any particular company or service. However, we really appreciate Alex's willingness to share his deep expertise on this topic with you today. So thank you, Alex, and welcome, and thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. You can enter questions into the chat via the Q&A function. We'll go through the questions throughout as we are able to, and then if we have time at the end, we will answer questions at the end. We are recording this webinar, and you'll be able to see the slides and the presentation on the ADU Resource Center's website and YouTube channel. If you'd like the session translated into another language, you can go to the More button at the bottom of your screen and then click the CC button to find the language that you'd like to receive translation in. And at the end of the webinar, we will have a brief survey. If you wouldn't mind taking 1 minute to answer, we'd really appreciate your feedback. So with that, if we go to the next slide, I want to just give you a quick overview of the ADU Resource Center before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's discussion. The ADU Resource Center, like I said, is a nonprofit, and we provide tools, information, and resources to homeowners to make the ADU process easier and more accessible. We believe that ADUs are a great housing solution that can add gentle density to our economically vibrant region, and we exist to help homeowners make their ADU dreams a reality. We have a number of free resources available on our website, smcadu.org, from detailed guides to floor plans for inspiration to an ADU calculator that will allow you to get an estimate of project costs based on real-world data. So if you are at the beginning stages of an ADU project or even partway through an ADU project, I do encourage you to visit our website and find and peruse the resources that we have available on there. All of them are free. On the next slide, I want to call your attention to one particular resource that I think can be very helpful, which is our ADU guidebook. It is a 70+ page step-by-step guide on the things you need to be thinking about at different stages of the ADU process, and it includes information that is specific to San Mateo County. And the other resource I wanted to call your attention to today on the next slide is our free feasibility consult service. This is a service that is available to homeowners in most San Mateo County locations. And if you are at the beginning stages of a project, if you're thinking about an ADU, exploring your options, wondering if an ADU is right for you, this is a great opportunity to talk to an expert for free. It's an hour-long consultation. They'll talk you through the different constraints and opportunities of your property and your lot, what you should be thinking about, recommendations and next steps, and you'll receive an individualized follow-up report after that consultation. It's absolutely free, and we don't have any interest in your ADU project. All we ask is that you submit a survey that tells us if you've decided to move forward with your ADU project. If you want to learn more or sign up, you could do that on our website on the contact page, so smcadu.org/contact. And lastly, do please stay in touch if you are thinking about or in the midst of an ADU project across social media channels. You'll find additional resources and things like webinars like this webinar that we have coming out with information that you should know about ADUs that can be helpful for your particular project. You can sign up for our newsletter on the contact page on our website or by going to the QR code that's on your screen. And while you're looking at that, I want to shift to introducing the context for today's conversation, which is junior ADUs and conversion ADUs. So Alex is going to talk more about what are junior ADUs, what are conversion ADUs, and how are they defined. But I want to situate these particular types of projects within the broader world of ADUs that exists out there. So we could think about 4 primary types of ADUs. One is an attached ADU, and this is an ADU that might share a wall or a breezeway or a pergola with your primary home. Above garage ADUs are also considered attached ADUs. Then there are detached ADUs, which is your classic backyard unit that's detached and freestanding. These can be really great options if you have space and flexibility on your lot. But today we're going to be focusing on 2 other types of ADUs, which are junior ADUs and conversion ADUs. These can be a great and cost-effective option, particularly to maximize the flexibility of your existing living space. Junior ADUs, or JADUs as we'll probably be referring to them throughout the rest of the presentation, are conversions of interior living space or an attached garage, and they can be up to 500 square feet. Now, conversion ADUs include JADUs, but it's a broader category. So one way to think about it is that all JADUs are conversions, but not all conversions are JADUs. So conversions can be larger than 500 square feet, or they might be conversions of a detached accessory structure on your property, like a detached garage. So with that, one other thing that I wanted to note that's very important to know with these different types of ADUs is that the current state law in California actually allows you to build 3 ADUs on your property. And these include a detached ADU that's 800 square feet or less, a conversion ADU, and a junior ADU. So if your property and your home allow it, you could actually have those 3 types of units in addition to an ADU on your property. And that is a huge game changer for homeowners and creates a huge amount of opportunity on lots across the state. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Alex, and I want to introduce him more formally. Alex is an architect with 25 years of experience. He founded Alex Tzang Architects in 2017 and has completed more than 220 ADU projects across San Mateo County. I would venture to guess that he is one of the more prolific ADU architects working in the county today. And he has also been a planning commissioner in South San Francisco since 2016. So he has a wealth of experience locally across the county working with all types of ADUs, including junior ADUs and conversions. So thank you again, Alex, for joining us, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Pleasure is mine. I hope I sound okay right now. And before I actually start, I want to tell to the audience how wonderful now we actually have San Mateo ADU Resource Center available to homeowners like you. When I started building the first ADU, which is in 2018, right fresh off the approval of the ADU laws, there is absolutely no people to actually look for or ask for, and a lot of possibility, feasibility, consultation is actually not available. Right now, this center is a great resource for you guys. Definitely use the free consultation at any cost, which is 0 again. All right, so today you are in the Understanding Conversion and Junior Accessory Dwelling Unit. I'm going to separate this in 3 parts. The first part is very, very general, and I will try to get it a little bit speedier. If I'm too quick, just in the question and answer, say slow down. But San Mateo is a huge county. These are probably the red dots are the ADU projects that I've done, like well covered the San Mateo area. So if your project is within San Mateo in particular, I likely will be able to answer some very, very specific question for you. So I'm not going to cover too much about the history, but ADU is actually not a brand new thing. However, after the 80s, the ADU concept has dropped out of the radar because land is getting rare and rare, and it's actually very, very hard to build ADUs because of the requirement for fireproofing, setback, and parking requirement. However, the game changer happened about like 7 years ago when the law allow you to have a lot more flexibility. So this will be covered in other seminars, but I just want to let you know that it's not a brand new concept. However, the flexibility and the incentive is very, very new. So I'm going to cut through all those. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. So I'm going to jump directly into the ADU types and specifics. So just now, Anna mentioned that there are 4 types of ADUs. The first one on the very, very right is like an attached ADU, meaning that the ADU is touching with your main house with one wall. However, the whole ADU is brand new built, like new foundation, new framing, new roofing, new everything, except that touching one wall. So that's called an attached ADU. And you can also see there's a detached ADU. These detached ADU, in other words, is like all 4 sides are not touching the main house. These 2 are considered kind of a one type of ADU that we're not talking about today. They provide the most flexibility, most separation, and also the largest square footage allowed. Now, I'm just going to let you take a brief look at that. I'm not going to really cover it because you have the replay on the YouTube channel for this one. So I am going to cover what today's main thing is, which is a conversion ADU and a JADU. Now, conversion ADU and JADU totally do not need to worry about setback and easement. Why? Is because it is within an existing structure no matter what. So as long as it's legally existing, any setback or easement that it currently violate or not does not matter. Now, what is a conversion ADU? So in layman term, let's say I have a house that is 2,000 square feet, but I actually have let's say a master suite that I really don't need. So I want to rent it out. Now I change that 400 square feet of master suite that include bathroom and a closet. Now I add a kitchen in it and try to make it into a new unit that has a new access door from the street. That is conversion. In other words, you are converting something that is legally existing. Remember, the key is legally existing. So you can actually change from any part of the main house. You can even take away like from the basement, from attached or detached garage, one of the bedrooms. You can take away the existing kitchen too and build a new kitchen to the main house. So again, any part of the existing can be converted, but you cannot take away the essential portion of the main house and leaving the main house non-habitable. Okay, so conversion ADU has about 800 square feet maximum, or 50% of the main house, whichever is larger. So in other words, if I have 2,000 square feet home, my conversion cannot be 1,000. Why? Because after I converted 1,000 square feet, firstly, it exceeded the 800. But can I do 800? No, because if I do an 800 converted ADU, I have a 1,200 square feet main house left. The 800 is more than 50% of the main house. So roughly speaking, you can convert 1/3 of the main house into the ADU, not larger than 800 square feet. Okay, so that's conversion ADU. Quite flexible because you don't have to do foundation, a lot of roof framing, and also insulation and roof and stuff like that. It does technically save a lot of money. However, if you see my 4th bullet point, it could trigger firewall, sound wall requirement, which I will discuss a little bit later. Next, which is like more useful in terms of when we are very, very tight in space, I could tell you any single family home in California, bare minimum, you will be able to do 1 JADU. It's that guaranteed. Why? Firstly, you can convert literally anything, a basement, a garage, a detached garage, like something that is really within the dirt or something like that. You can still convert the area as long as there was existing structure enclosing it. However, JADU has one major limitation, and it is it has maximum 500 square feet. So when you consider, for today's purpose, when you consider whether I should do a converted ADU or JADU, do know that you are actually allowed to have both. So do pick the right one, which will not stop you from doing the other one. For example, if you can do a garage ADU, which is less than 400 square feet, and you can also do a conversion ADU that's 500 square feet from the main house, don't just convert the garage into a convert ADU. And how do you determine that? Literally, the architect will say it is a converted ADU or JADU on the application. So when you're in doubt, do ask the architect or Anna about which designation you want to do. However, JADU do have some limitation. Owner occupancy has to happen in either the JADU or the main house, whereas all the other ADUs has no owner occupancy requirement. So this is the major setback for JADU. However, the flexibility that JADU comes in is also a lot. For example, look at the last bullet point. Bathroom is actually not required for a JADU as long as it is connected to the main house. You provide a door. So you can't convert a garage and close all four walls and it has a kitchen and no bathroom. No, but punch a door in, which normally is your normal garage access, into the house. Whether it access into the laundry room, the kitchen, a bedroom, it doesn't matter. As long as it has freedom to travel to a bathroom, that is allowed. So that's a big wow. I'm gonna pause a little bit so I don't bite, and even if I bite, I can't bite you right now. You're online, so feel free to ask me any question, or if Anna, you have any question about the definitions, feel free to ask me. I'm gonna pause for 3 seconds.
Alex, are you going to talk about firewall requirements later? Because I know
Yes.
that's the big question, and fire doors. Okay, we have one question coming in, which is, does a JDU require a kitchen?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer will be coming in the following slide. I will be talking about what constitutes to a major ADU component. However, again, JADU has the leeway of not having a bathroom. Since you have the question about the kitchen, let me tell you what defines a dwelling unit. Crazy answer is when you have one kitchen, that is one dwelling unit. So when you have a main house and you just put a kitchen in another family room, you say, hey, I'm an Indian or I'm a Chinese, I need 2 cooking spots. That actually is illegal. So that's why the short answer for any ADU, JADU, conversion ADU, it has to have a kitchen. Okay, so that's the short answer for you. Before I move too far, we all hear that parking is not required for JADU or any ADUs. That's a general belief, and it generally is true in St. Mateo. However, the actually trigger point for skipping a parking is when you are half a mile radius away, less than half a mile radius away from the public transit. It could be a Caltran, it could be a BART, it could be a major bus stop. However, as ADU has been blooming, cities have been tightening up some of these rules. So even, for example, in South San Francisco, you will see that the lighten up map is the entire South City. However, area in red means the area that there are transit within half a mile radius. And as you can see, it will surprise some people, like in the Sign Hill or actually in the Westboro area, you are actually required to provide parking for ADUs. So do check your area, or do have Anna help you check whether a parking indeed is needed or not. Most of the time they don't need, but let's say in a situation like this, when it is needed, don't panic. Most of the time, most jurisdictions allow you to use the driveway area, something like a 9x20, 9x19 area as the designated parking spot for the ADU. But I'm not going to cover that in detail, but do know that is not that hopeless. But when you have a super short driveway and you are outside the zone, then that's tough luck. All right.
One thing I would add on that is JDUs are exempted from parking requirements specifically.
Yes, JADU only. Anything ADU without the J is like subjected to all these requirements. And thank you, Anna. That's a big thing. All right, I'm gonna go to the ADU basics, which is trying to answer what is an ADU? We all kind of know it. It's another unit that has a kitchen. What are the basic requirements for it? So do know a full bath generally for converted ADU is required. And what is a full bath? It's a sink, it's a shower, it's a toilet. Again, JADU can exempt from it. And efficiency kitchen. What is a kitchen first, before I define efficiency? The kitchen has three major components: the cooking facility, a sink, and a refrigerator. Now the question is, of course, how big, how large, how blah, 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 right? I can tell you in some weird situation, especially in JADU scenario, microwave sometimes can count. Some plan checker actually don't like it and will try to make some requirements, but I think JADU, if you say I put a microwave here, sometimes it gets approved, but I would not recommend that. But the next best option is actually a 2-burner stove or range, something like an 18-inch that would suffice. And all the time when you have a cooktop, you need a hood. Now, a sink could be a bar sink, something like a 15 by 18, 18 by 18 would do. You don't need a 30 or 36-inch. Refrigerator doesn't need to be full-blown. It could even be a under-counter refrigerator. And you need some counter space for food prep. That's a requirement. You need some storage space. So that adds to, I'm not trying to boast, but like without the refrigerator, let's say you have a standalone refrigerator, sometimes you can fit within the 6 feet length of all the other requirements. But however, generally thinking, try to fit all these requirements within a 10-foot linear length of kitchen. That will be like more reasonable for public health, humanity, and it's more useful in general. Okay, and of course a sleeping area. Against most people believe actually you don't need a bedroom. I can call it a sleep living area. However, don't make it less than 150 square feet, and do not include closet or the kitchen area in this sleep living space. 150 clear space for sleep living. That's the basic requirement for the ADU. Any question as I start going forward? Looks like none.
Nope.
So I do need to talk about what is a habitable space, because this is the biggest misconception from people. They think, hey, my garage, I already put sheetrock in, and I already put sheetrock in here, so all I need is to put a kitchen and bathroom and I'm done. No, because a garage by definition is non-habitable space, meaning that it does not have the environment built to actually have people sleep or do work or have human activity there as a daily activity. So what are the requirements for habitable space? Namely, the living space, the bathroom, the bedroom, the kitchen, and any other space in the house. So firstly, you need natural light and ventilation, aka the windows. So this normally won't be the biggest deal for a lot of projects. However, for conversion ADU, normally it already have natural light and ventilation. But for basement conversion, garage conversion, normally you don't have enough windows. Some people say, no, I want to sleep. I don't want that much window. It's not up to you. There's a ratio that you have to calculate for how much window per square footage. If you want me to give you a glimpse of what it looks like, generally speaking, 100 square feet of space need about a 12 square feet of window. That is a slider. Okay, that's a very, very general how much space you need. So if you have a 200 square feet space, you will generally need about 24 square feet of window how you distribute it. Now you need an insulation for all the walls. So again, conversion from an existing bedroom, that won't be an issue. However, converting from a garage, from a basement, from a laundry room, from any inhabitable space, do remember about doing insulation. That's a requirement. 3 is actually heating. You have to provide general heat. Now, this one I'm going to cover a little bit more maybe later, but I'm going to dive in. Heating. For any ADU, you cannot share heating system with the main house. So I'm going to repeat this one more time. Any ADU, so let's say I convert my garage, sorry, I convert part of my master bedroom and it exceeds 500 square feet, hence I have to call it a conversion ADU instead of a JADU. Now, but all the heat is in place, you actually have to cap the two systems and do new heating system standalone. Why? It's actually a health concern that you cannot share the same air that you breathe in and breathe out between two units. except JADU actually have a little bit more leeway. I see most of the jurisdiction allow you to actually have the leeway of not making two separate heating system. I do see one jurisdiction that occasionally require JADU to actually have separate, saying that it's a better practice or not, but do know most of the jurisdiction that I did, the separate heating system can be ignored. Not that I propose you to do that, but it can be ignored, which saves you space. And normal habitable space is 7'6". However, ADU actually just need 7 feet. ADU just needs 7 feet of height from finish to the finished ceiling. So that's a plus, especially when we're talking about garage and conversion space. I'm not going to cover too much. This is design, but then all sleep area needs an egress window or door and a smoke detector. So that's the basic of that. And I mean, this will be a general 400 square feet ADU. I will have more plans to show, but this is one of the most common conversion ADU template. And I don't mind you just screenshot, share, post, say that you designed it. I don't care. I mean, anyone can design something like that. It's like how I actually carefully design the windows, how to actually make things efficient, and how to improve the project that counts. Now, but this is generally kind of like a 20-foot by 20-foot space. So that's about 400 square feet, kind of like a 2-car garage. It's always easily, you can easily divide a space like this into kind of like 4 squares. 2 squares can be an open living kitchen space. 1 square would be the bedroom, and the other square kind of is closet, bathroom, laundry, and stuff like that. So if you want to know, hey, if I have 400 square feet, can I do 1 bedroom? Generally speaking, it's okay. Yeah, if you have a 2-car garage, generally you can do something like that. I do see a hand raise. Connie, I'm not quite sure if we have to address you. If Connie, if you actually have a question, please type it and we'll try to address it. So I'm going to pause here a little bit. Anyone has any question about the basic of the ADU?
Alex, on the heating point, can you talk a little bit about how much that can cost, that can add to a project, the separate heating systems, or give a
Yeah,
general
it's
ballpark?
actually kind of weird because so let's say most of the house that you have already is actually a ducted system. So if you have to cap the duct, do connect a new furnace system to the duct, and then do a new register and new air return and stuff like that in an existing tight space, that could actually be troublesome. However, most of the time that I see, especially California is going very, very electrical and not gas, is people will start doing mini splits in the ADU regardless. Why? Because one, it provides heat and cool, and it does not need to use the duct. So save some structural change, save some attic space, and it's easy to convert, and it's actually more future ready. And you can control the zone on each of it. Downside is the cost of the machine is slightly more expensive, but installation is not that hard, and it doesn't really take up more space than your small ADU already has.
Gotcha.
I do have 2 more questions.
Yep. So does a microwave count as a cooking device in a JADU kitchen?
Yes. So you can take your bet on doing that. I can tell you I actually have seen a Portola Valley ADU having a microwave and count, but I also have seen a South San Francisco rejecting that idea. So it's kind of a hit and miss. I would highly suggest, especially on this project, do a 2-burner, which is not super expensive, and at least it is like really space saving, 18 inches wide, and don't do a microwave as the cooking facility. However, on the JADU, I have seen success using that. Not recommended. I've seen success, not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. And then on the 150 square foot living space / bedroom requirement, someone asked if you have a separate bedroom and living space. So I assume.
And you don't have that requirement. If you have a separate bedroom and the bedroom minimum is 70 square feet, then that living space, normally any habitable space have to be at least 70 square feet with a minimum dimension of 7 feet. I don't think you would do a living room less than 7 feet depth, but like, just so you know, some people has designed a 6-foot by 10-foot office thinking that that's legal. That's not legal. So when you design space, minimum 7 feet, and 7 by 10, which makes it about 70 square feet, or 8 by 9, that's 152 square feet. But do know those criteria. But the question is, if you have a separate bedroom, you don't need the 150 square feet living/bedroom space. Okay, I am going, like, you can keep the question coming. I'm monitoring it, and Anna is monitoring, but I'm going to go for some misunderstanding, frequently missed requirements. And this is the first time I actually mentioned this in any of the webinars that I've actually spoken, because I realized a lot of false expectation on JADU and conversion ADUs. Everything is easy, should be cheap. A garage conversion, I should be, hey, maybe $30,000 I would be able to know. Why? So firstly, there is something called sewer lateral compliance requirement. What is it? Is they have to, whenever you do an ADU or actually add bathroom, add fixture count to your property, the building department or the public works department will want you to do a sewer lateral video of your house connecting to the street, the sewer line, to make sure that it is not broken, it's not like rooted, it's not shifted, it's like have the right dimension and stuff like that. Now, most of the time, if your house has not been serviced sewer lateral for over 20 years, it will need to be replaced. And a lot of people did not remember this requirement. And when they start to do a low budget conversion and then this requirement come in and they have to fix, it could cost you $15,000, $18,000 if you have to replace the entire sewer lateral. How do you know if you need to replace? So firstly, if you if you have lived in here for more than 20 years and never done one, likely you will have to. For sure, adding any type of ADU will trigger this, except a very, very small JADU, occasionally you might not trigger it. However, if you buy a house, newly buy the house of it, or if the house has has done a sewer lateral compliance within 5 years, you actually do not need to do that anymore. But let's say you're unlucky, you got a sewer lateral compliance 7 years ago. Chances are you just need to do a video to prove that you're okay, and the chance is extremely high. I do see a question. Anna, if you think it's appropriate, then just chime in.
Yes, so on the sewer lateral point, someone asks, I just had the sewer lateral on the street replaced in, so let's say 3 years ago, do I still need to have a video?
So that question is what I just said, is hopefully when you replace it, you actually had a certificate. If you have achieved 2022 sewer lateral certificate, even when you apply for permit, they ask for it, you can just mention this and it will be clear. So likely not.
There's another question about broader project costs, but maybe we can save that until the end of this section because it's a really good question.
Yes, so we could leave it to the tail end if we have time. So other JADU or conversion question people frequently miss is, oh, I already have a door, don't worry, everything is easy. No, the entry door, and do know this is actually a big deal breaker. The entry door has to be a 3 foot wide minimum swing door. So I repeat, it has to be 3 feet minimum opening and swing. It cannot be a 6 foot slider. It cannot be a 5 foot double door that constitute a 5 foot opening. One swing, 3 feet minimum. So a lot of times when you thought your door is adequate because I already have a door, make sure you have 3 feet. If you don't, likely you have to change the structure. And if you have a 2-story, it might be a structural issue. So do know about that requirement, not the major thing. The next one is actually the major thing. For ADU, so converted ADU. So let's say you have a upper floor above and you have a bedroom below. Now I just want to convert that bedroom into a converted ADU. What will happen? Any different unit, when they touch each other, whether it's a wall or a ceiling, those plane has to be fireproofed and soundproof. So again, I repeat, all units that are different, the ADU and the main unit, when they touch, whatever plane that they touch has to be completely soundproof and fireproof. And a lot of contractor will be like, yeah, it's easy fireproof, just do a 5/8 sheetrock and just put some insulation in there, that's done. No, because when the requirement kicks in, they require you to select a tested assembly. Generally, there are a bunch of assembly that you have to done, but I can safely tell you most of the tested assembly does not fit in an existing upper floor and lower floor situation. So when you convert an ADU that has 2 units touching up and down, there could be quite some extra costs associated with the fireproofing and soundproofing. And later on, I will have a detail to show you how crazy that is. Okay, so I'm going to just do that. Now, on the side, let's say you are doing a garage and you're touching the main house. Most of the time, the garage is touching a kitchen. Now, when you have to do fireproof and soundproof, a lot of times, if the architect is not careful or actually if did not guide you, they will call for a fireproof detail that require you to take down all the backsplashes and the cabinet just to install it. But if you don't pay attention to that, you thought as a proof, thank you, Mr. Architect, and in the field, you won't pass. So do know when you have the firewall requirement, ask the architect, ask the question, do I have to take down these things to install it? A lot of times they either don't pay attention or will tell you yes, then that's not the right solution. Okay, I will pause a little bit. This is actually the most scary, I won't say scam, but actually it's the biggest risk that people think ADU and JADU is easy when you do conversion and got stumbled.
And can you speak a little bit about fireproof doors on this topic? Because I've heard those can be from some that those can be difficult to procure.
I see. So good question. When do I need a fire door? Is whenever I have an opening through a firewall. Generally speaking, the ADU requires something like a 45-minute door. That's the minimum, and I heard 45 is actually very hard to find. The next highest would be 1 hour, which is more expensive and ugly. But the lower denomination, which is 20 minutes, does not suffice in most cases. It only suffices when it's from the main house to the garage, but not from a unit to another unit. So why would you have a question about procuring is because they look ugly. You don't have choice for pretty houses, especially conversion ADU. Normally, you will say, okay, I want to use this as a rental, but I want to use it as well. So you don't want that door to be like a fire door. But that is the biggest issue when you try to punch a hole through the firewall. But I don't think it will be a big issue if you buy something size up. However, none of the fire door looks that pretty, that's for sure. So carefully design it so that it don't face your main living space and stuff like that would be ideal. Okay. And the last but not least is shear wall upgrade. Why is it a thing? So again, when you convert a garage, convert a basement, they were considered non-habitable space. Habitable space, especially after year 89, you have to have some shear wall protection. And when it was originally designed not as a habitable space, we assumed it has no shear wall. So when you do insulation, when you do a conversion, do plan on more shear wall to be installed throughout the 4 walls. Now you will say, okay, then I just add plywood. No, because the shear wall has to be bolted into the foundation. So more bolts have to go to the foundation, and what if the foundation is not deep enough and stuff like that? So one thing leads to another. The shear wall upgrade is something that people tend to think it's $0 because they don't think it's a thing. It will incur costs, same as insulating the wall and ceiling. Because I mentioned the habitable space need to be insulated, and insulating the whole wall. Sometimes you already put sheetrock in the plywood in the garage, but then you have to rip it off and put insulation. I know there will be a question like, oh, I actually did put insulation. I'm very, very not futuristic. I planned for the future and I already did, but is the inspector gonna rip all my sheetrock just to prove that I have insulation there? The short answer is maybe. The long answer is you can actually maybe cut 2 holes on different walls. And if they generally see that there are insulation in that hole and that hole, they will believe you. I do see most cases can fly like that, and then you just patch that hole. But you do have inspector that require you to do the whole thing ripped down. For example, you have really bad attitude. They have the ability and authority to actually need to see the whole thing. So in case you're in a code enforcement situation or in this situation, don't panic, but do know that it's a requirement. Any other question before I move on to the next slide?
Someone mentioned electrical panel upgrades as well.
Okay, good question. So I'm just going to show another larger plan. I'm not going to talk about this plan, but electrical. So electrical upgrade, JADU and ADU by default, they are not large square footage. My gut feeling is, so let's say for a conversion ADU, it has already enough power to support that area anyway, if you are converting from an existing habitable space. So if you convert existing habitable space to conversion ADU, likely you don't have to upgrade. If you are converting from non-habitable space to habitable space, likely the load increase. And depending on the calculation by the architect or electrical engineer, you may or may not. A general rule of thumb, an ADU about 400 square feet, 75 amp is good enough. Or let's say if you have the main house is 1,500 square feet and you build a 400 square feet ADU, you may or may not need to go up to about 125. But a general rule of thumb is if your existing is 60, 75, I'm 100% sure you have to upgrade your panel. Okay. Now, the second follow-up question about the electric panel is, do you need a separate meter? I was going to cover that in a later time, but like I'm just going to flow with this. And most ADU cases, you are not allowed to be required. So I repeat, you're not allowed to be required to install new meter. Now, when I say it that way, is to say that you have the flexibility to choose. However, actually, I've seen situation where PG&E is the person, is the entity to require you to have a separate meter, even building does not require it. So this happened in actually San Bruno, and it actually happened once in San Mateo. And their triggering point is you are doing an attached ADU, and that's why I need it. Like I kind of can't figure out their reasoning, and I quote to him that it is the state law that you cannot require, and PG&E just take their time and answer, and eventually we have to give in because like they said I'll look into it, and no, without this I cannot provide and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm gonna pause a little bit and I will enter the final section, which is some case study, but I know I covered quite a lot of specifics already anyway. Any questions that you can't wait for me to answer?
One comment I want to make about PG&E, since you mentioned it, that PG&E seems to be a really, really big hangup for a lot of homeowners doing ADUs. So the general advice we always give is get in PG&E's queue as quickly as possible, and your local jurisdiction doesn't have any influence over PG&E. So it could be a really big point of frustration, and unfortunately it's a state entity. So be aware that is often a pain point.
12 to 14 months, $16,000 to $18,000 if you do new meters. Like I think that's the going rate. But luckily for today's projects, normally you can dodge it.
One question that was asked earlier that I think is a nice summary question, since you covered a lot of really helpful specific details, but kind of zooming out, because a lot of these factors add cost, right, to the project. So can you provide some general comments or estimates on how much these different types of ADUs cost, as a general rule of thumb, and any kind of key factors that can really substantially swing costs one way or another? And, we could focus on
Yes,
ADUs.
I can actually jump in. Actually, in the final Q&A, I actually throw in some FAQ. This is one of them. But since you asked, let's dive into that. In San Mateo, so I'm basically San Mateo guy. So I think my fees on doing the ADU, I mean the construction fee generally, I think it's around there. Generally, what I see, the construction cost for conversion. So let's say a 2-car garage converted to an ADU. What is the bidding cost right now? I see they bid somewhere around $120,000 to $150,000, not including the finished material like the kitchen, counter cabinet, and bathroom. However, those are fairly easy. Like you're not going to spend a lot of money on those for such a small area. So you will be shocked why it is still as close to $400 a square foot. The reason is because you actually have to undo and redo quite a lot for a garage. You have to trench, you have to add bathroom, you have to deal with slope, you have to insulate, you have to do shear wall, especially if your garage has an upper floor in it. It will approach the $150,000. So in a nutshell, if you are considering to do a conversion or a JADU, the worst type, the most complex type, is when you have a second floor above the unit that you're trying to create. That is always the hardest to get approved. You will miss a lot of fire detail, and the fire detail is so expensive that it will be devastating if you're not prepared for that. That's number one, and I think if some of you have that kind of situation, definitely go for a consultation first before you move forward. However, there are other general rule of thumbs that is very helpful, and it is actually my philosophy too. The best value is undo the least and create the most. Okay, so I repeat, undoing the least, creating the most. So what it means is, let's say if I have some plumbing already in here, don't try to move the bathroom all the way to the other side. Try to put the bathroom in here so the plumbing is already in place and you can save money. Normally that will be a natural response for most people. However, you should also plan your plan to existing window openings. Yes, you can shift some window opening, but normally when you greatly open some windows, you will reduce the amount of shear wall, turning into a lot of shear wall upgrades, exterior upgrades, and stuff like that. So do plan on utilizing existing opening, change a door to a window, put a door where a window is, and stuff like that. That saved a lot. I would say, yeah, I think these are actually the main thing, and the rest is actually layout. And try not to fit too much stuff into one thing. I see a lot of people try to do hallways, storage, attic storage, and stuff like that. Those complicate, like you thought you were trying to be smart and use space, but the architectural drawing that create all those make the drawing seems very, very difficult. And the harder the product look like, the more expensive the bits are. So in general, contractors look at the drawing. If it feels easy, yeah, they tend to not bid too crazily. But if it looks thick, the garage ADU is like this thick with a lot of interior elevation, stuff like that, it drives up. So the quality of the drawing and also the thickness of the drawing actually matters. So that's that. But most of the JADU and ADU, like the conversion ADU, I would say it will reduce to about $200 a square foot, drastically, because I don't have to do all the foundation, shear wall, insulation, and all those. Hope I give you a glimpse.
Yeah, and as a reference point, and Alex, let me know if you disagree, given current costs. I would say like a new detached ADU is going anywhere from like $450 to $600 a square foot. Is that a fair comparison point?
I will say what I see. So let's use this one. So this one has been a model that I've built over 10 times, probably 15 times. It's a two bath detached ADU. So this thing, contractors that I see winning these currently probably bid around maybe $320,000, $330,000, excluding the finishes, excluding those kitchen, bathroom, and stuff like that. However, any ADU that is large enough like this one, you might require solar panel and stuff like that, so it will increase the cost a little bit. So what Anna is mentioning is everything lump sum 450 to 600, maybe. But I would say the way that I like to separate it is like if the contract, because at the end you will have to bid for the contractor. I think the contractor rate for something like this may be around 350 this year, and then you have to buy the finishes, so that will hit you somewhere in the $500, $520 overall range. It's doable. So as long as the design is clean, easy to follow, they don't have to get too expensive. So like very, very clean design is actually a key. So I'm gonna move forward because actually time flies. So shoot all the questions, I'll try to answer most of it, but I'm gonna give you some case study how JADU look like in real life. So this one is actually converting a garage. Look at the upper right corner, that's a single car garage. How do I actually even make it into a ADU? This is actually among one of the smallest approvable. So why? Because okay, it naturally like they want to come down and use laundry room, but then they want the ADU to share the laundry room, and they want the kitchen in there, and they want the separate bathroom. I was like, wow, all in there. Yes, all in there. So creatively, this was the laundry room door is an existing door. So I go in there, enter the ADU, punch in the JADU entry on the right, do an efficiency kitchen. You see that? So that's super short. Look at that 2-burner because they don't care. Do a sink and a refrigerator there, and that's it. This was an approved plan layout. Now, I cheated because the box, if you look at the studio, the space is indeed 150 feet if I include the space in the left side of the kitchen. It's barely making 150, but I sort of cheated, sort of approved, and there you go. This is one of the smallest JADU that you can find. So if someone tell you that no, one car garage cannot be a JADU, no, like they haven't seen things yet like you guys do. All right, so if you have something more generous, let's see. So this is converting from a 2-car garage. Look at the lower left corner. So what this does is there's a family room connecting to the garage, and this goes to more realistic situation where, oh, I still want to use the laundry room kind of scenario. It's very, very common. So how do they address that? You can see they want to create a laundry room on where the family room touches and exit to the rear yard. And at the same time, the laundry room will go to the JADU. Unfortunately, there's no other way. They have to connect to the JADU bedroom, but then in the front, it's open living kitchen. So when you convert things, there are multiple things you can do based on your taste and needs. So this is just one of the way. The other way is this one. Look at the lower left. Again, it's a garage where I have to convert it into a ADU. And this time they actually don't need something too big. They actually just want to convert a garage. However, there's no way they can convert a garage without replacing new parking spots. So they use the ADU to create a unit that eventually they could also use as a family room. So as you can see, I call it a humongous JADU living sleep room, but this is literally when they go out the mudroom, it will also be their giant office, living room, and stuff like that. So the play with the JADU has a lot of ease, and especially now I don't have to share. I can share the heating and stuff like that. I'll share 2 more case study and then I'll go to Q&A. This is converting from a basement. So do know this whole thing on the right side is a garage and on the left is just crawl space. And because when you're doing the crawl space with a lot of structure, it's sometimes very, very hard to actually make sense of it. So don't try to randomly attempt a design. But in this case, you can see that we try to incorporate all the posts and foundation to hide it and try to make it something reasonable. So why do I not convert the whole thing? I'm not going to have you answer it because I'll give you the answer. Is I want this to be a JADU to have easy requirements. So I have to keep it under 500. And I have a bunch of crawl space there. And look at that left side crawl space. It was a 7-foot tall room that I have to say crawl space. But I have an access there. Okay, so you figure it out. Now that's also a basement conversion. And I do want to mention that this one has a requirement of firewall and sound wall. So look at this cross section. Wherever that like wobble like symbol is between the lower floor and upper floor, that is a sound wall, firewall assembly. Whatever holding up that wall also have to be fire and sound wall assembly. So as you can see, we have to do all this fire and sound sealing in this project because it's a requirement in this case. And it's actually costing quite some money, but it's inevitable because they want something, they want to call this an ADU, even though it's qualified for JADU, so that they could rent it out upper and lower. Now, this is highly technical. Contractors, you will thank me later, but this is highly technical. Let me explain to you. When I have a ceiling like this, what needs to be done so that I don't have to mess with the bathroom floor, kitchen floor on top. So if you see there are joists there, I have to put a sheetrock at the top of the joist, of the floor joist, and then I have to use some nailer to hold it in place. This is to provide fireproofing from the top. Then I put insulation. Then I put resilient channel, which is those half-inch metal thing, therefore walking over to dampen the walking and impact sound. And then 2 layers of 5/8 Type X chipboard. This is the approved workaround that I actually created back in 2018 for South San Francisco, San Mateo, San Bruno. They allow to use it, but otherwise, a lot of people have to rip off the top to actually get the fireproofing done. So, but this is still nothing that easy. So do know whenever you have a top floor that is a habitable space and you have to do fireproof, soundproof, it could be quite an expense. So I'm going to pause like that. I'm going to have you ask me any question. I'm running out of time. So thank you.
We are 2 minutes from the end. Alex, can you stay on another 5 minutes? Okay.
I am totally fine.
So we have some really good questions coming in, some specific ones, but I just want to address first, if folks have to drop off at the 7 o'clock mark, a broader question that was asked about vetting architects. And I think one of the things that I said in the chat is about whether the architect has worked in your jurisdiction. I think one of the broader comments that I wanted to add to your presentation, Alex, is how much specificity and how much variation there is, not just across jurisdictions, but even across permit reviewers within a jurisdiction. You kind of never know what you're going to get. And as Alex has kind of been showing and alluding to, having someone who knows the jurisdiction and knows the context is incredibly valuable because they understand this jurisdiction, this permit checker cares about this, but not this, right? It's not a science, it's more of an art. And so I would say that's a really important factor when you're talking to architects. The other thing about architects is, an architect is not just a designer, they're the project manager. So are they going to be able to help you find the contractors, work with you throughout the process? Do you have a good kind of communication with them from that project management standpoint? Alex, is there anything else you would add on that front?
Yeah, so the good thing across the entire San Mateo County, except one city that I'm not going to mention, it's generally very fair game. Like meaning that as long as your architect knows the stuff, you don't have to know trade secret or dark secret. However, each city does have their specific pain point that they have to address. For example, Millbrae, the water is really, really bad. Then they have more requirements regarding drainage and stuff like that. Some other pain points, like for example, San Bruno, whenever you start doing a project, they will check on your sidewalk and see if it's cracked or something. If it does, they require you to fix it before you actually have a project approval, and they will come in and take pictures, so that you have to hire a licensed contractor to fix it. So there are things like these that are still legitimate, but like they're just like little city specificity that you just have to ask. But yeah, most architect would be able to do this. Honestly, I don't think any of these are super hard, but the super hard one is when you have an upper floor above your ADU conversion. That is actually pretty tough. I can guarantee you that. More surprised than anything. Yeah.
Okay, so that's general. Let's get into a couple of specific questions. Flooring requirements in a conversion ADU. Are moisture absorbing membranes required?
Yes, thank you very much. So let's say in a garage, the garage is not actually having, let me go back to this one. So let's say the garage or any slab on grade, naturally you want to assume that they have like rocks and sand and 10 mil there. In actuality, there's not. So it is actually a requirement that when you convert that, you have to add waterproofing. And I'm gonna spill it out to you. The waterproofing is either a 10 mil like plastic or like hot mop, like a torch down black thing that create a mask on the ground that will do the waterproofing. So they will require you to do that before you put the finished floor. Now, so that's why when you got caught as a code enforcement situation and you already put flooring, sometimes you don't have that waterproofing in there, you will fail inspection.
We have a question about Title 24. Is it required for?
100%. Like, I'll give you a short answer.
And can you just give a brief definition of Title 24 and what?
Yes. So Title 24 energy calculation. So we are California. California across all 50 states, we are the strictest state. Like one of the strictest and not strictest. So we have, whenever we create a unit, we have to make sure that we design it to accommodate the bare minimum requirement where the building code and state want us to be. In a nutshell, you will have to hire an energy consultant to actually run an energy model of where south, northeast, southwest is, where your window opening is, how big is your, how large is your insulation value and stuff like that, and test it. If you fulfill bare minimum, and I say, just get the bare minimum and that's all you need. You don't have to be anything extra because bare minimum in California is still very, very strict. I can also tell you one thing. You are likely never gonna get a electric tankless water heater past Title 24. The negative percentage that it generates is like negative 56%, which you have no other components that you can compensate it. So in short, because of the energy report that you have to satisfy, tankless electric water heater is never gonna fly. I mean, you can say my neighbor has it, yeah, because they didn't go through permit or they swap it. So I'm not promoting that, but I'm just saying that that's likely the answer. Most of the time, you either do tankless gas or heat pump electric. And heat pump electric is the up and coming one because why? Cities are getting more strict on when you install a tankless gas water heater, they want you to upgrade the gas line. And sometimes gas line is not allowed to be upgraded, and sometimes the upgrading gas line wait for so long and also it's costly. So the later solution that I see is actually tanked heat pump system. If you don't upgrade your gas line and you just swap your tankless gas water heater, chances are you're not using the full capacity. Even though you buy a 5.8 gallon, 9 gallon, you might be operating in 2.1 gallon that you don't know because the gas line is not big enough. But I'm gonna cut short on that one. Energy report 100% needed. And I have to tell you one thing. Let's say if you are doing a main house, 2,000 square feet, now you make it into a 1,400 and 600 main house and ADU, you actually have to do two energy report. One is for the main house, 1,400, because you reduce. The other is for 600 ADU. So do know that. But if you're just converting the garage, you just need to provide one.
Well, I think that covers all of the questions that have been asked. Someone asked about the request for feasibility consultations. So if you have submitted a feasibility consult form and haven't received a response, please get in contact. You could get in contact with me directly at info@smcadu.org or Anna@smcadu.org. The contact information is on the website, so let me know.
Let me flip back to that one.
Yes, and I think, well, to wrap up, since we are over time, I think, Alex, thank you for sharing so much really valuable information. I think what this showed is there are just a lot of factors and considerations, particularly for these types of ADUs. Having a skilled architect is very helpful in making these determinations. And, you know, every project is different. You probably didn't walk away from this with any answers, but at least hopefully this helped prompt you to think about the types of questions that you should be asking as you're embarking on the process and the things that you should be keeping front of mind as you're talking to potential contractors and other professionals. If, like I said, the feasibility consults are available to most homeowners across San Mateo County, so please do get in contact, you can get in contact directly with me. That information is on the website if you signed up and haven't heard a response. And otherwise, thank you very much, and feel free to reach out to the ADU Resource Center or Alex directly. His information is also in these slides if you have any follow-up questions. The recording for this will be uploaded to the website, smcadu.org, on the events page very shortly. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, Alex. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I enjoyed it.